There's a moment in every person's life when they realize they've been living a lie. For some, it comes in the form of a slow, creeping suspicion. For others, it's a brutal, earth-shattering event that leaves them gasping for air, wondering how they could have been so blind. For me, it was somewhere in between. I didn't catch my wife in the act. There was no dramatic confrontation, no screaming match in the middle of our living room. It wasn't even a single moment of realization. It was death by 1,000 cuts, a slow unraveling of trust, a quiet, sinking feeling in my gut that I kept ignoring, a voice in the back of my head whispering that something wasn't right. But I drowned it out with excuses. She's been working late because she's stressed. She's on her phone more because of work. She doesn't kiss me like she used to because we've been together for years. This is normal, right? I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that we were just in a rough patch, that every relationship goes through this. But deep down, I knew the truth. She had already left me long before I ever walked away. The first signs. It started small, as these things always do. She started going out more. First it was work events, then it was girls' nights, then it was suddenly, I need some space. I didn't push. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure, jealous husband. But then the lies started stacking up. She told me she was at the office late one night, but I drove past and the parking lot was empty. She said she was with a friend. But that same friend posted a picture of herself at a completely different place, tagging a different group of people. Her phone, which used to be left on the nightstand, now never left her hand, always face down, always on silent. One night I asked her if she was happy. Just a simple question. She hesitated, not even a full second, maybe just half a breath, but it was enough. I think that was the moment I truly knew. The breaking point. Then everything changed. It wasn't some movie-style revelation. There was no sudden moment of proof, no text message I found, no dramatic confession. It was worse than that. It was her indifference. I came home early from work. I had planned a surprise for her, something stupid and small but meaningful. A reminder of the life we had before things got so distant. I set up candles, cooked her favorite meal, even picked up a bottle of wine she once said she loved. And when she walked in, she barely even looked at it. She glanced at the table, muttered something about being tired, and walked straight to the bedroom without so much as a second glance. That was it. I sat there at the table, staring at the untouched plates, at the candles flickering uselessly in an empty room, and something inside me just shut off. I realized in that moment that I wasn't fighting for our marriage. I was fighting for an illusion. The woman I loved, the one I had married, didn't exist anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she never really had. The decision. I could have confronted her. I could have demanded answers, screamed, cried, begged her to tell me the truth, but what would have been the point? She had already made her choice, so I made mine. I didn't leave in some dramatic way. I didn't pack a bag in front of her, didn't slam doors, didn't announce my decision. Instead, I disappeared quietly. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I took my things, not all of them, just the ones that mattered. I left my keys on the counter. No note, no explanation, just silence. And then I walked out the door and didn't look back. She wanted to see what life was like without me. Fine. She was about to find out. The moment I walked out of that house, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. It wasn't relief, not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal still too raw. But there was an undeniable lightness in my chest, as if I had set down a heavy weight that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The house, the relationship, the endless cycle of trying to be enough for someone who had already checked out. It was all behind me now. I didn't have a plan, not really. I wasn't running away, but I also wasn't staying in the wreckage of the life I thought I had. I drove without a destination, just letting the road guide me away from everything familiar. My phone buzzed a few times, but I didn't check. I wasn't ready to see her name on the screen. Wasn't ready to hear whatever half-hearted excuses or manipulative words she might throw my way. I had given her every opportunity to be honest, and she had chosen silence. Now, I was choosing my own. I checked into a small motel just outside of town. Nothing fancy, just a place to disappear for a while. As I sat on the stiff mattress, staring at the cheap wallpaper, it hit me that I had no idea what came next. I had spent so long pouring my energy into saving a relationship that was already dead that I hadn't thought about what my life would look like beyond it. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going back. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I turned my phone on and saw the messages. At first, it was casual. Hey, where are you? Then confusion. Why did you take your stuff? Then irritation. This is childish. Can we talk? And finally, the panic. Please, just call me. I'm worried. I stared at those messages for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to call her out on everything, to force her to admit what we both knew was true. But what was the point? She wasn't texting me because she missed me. She wasn't suddenly realizing how much I meant to her. No. This was just the shock of losing control. I didn't block her. That would have been too easy. Instead, I left her messages on read, let her sit with the silence. The beginning of regret. I spent the next few days in limbo, existing but not really living. I ate because I had to, slept when exhaustion took over, but mostly I just existed in a strange in-between state, processing what had happened while trying to figure out my next move. And then, on the third day, she called. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the decline button, but curiosity won. I let it ring once more before I answered, not saying a word. Hello? Her voice was cautious, uncertain. I said nothing. A shaky breath. I don't understand what's going on. Why did you leave like that? Still, I stayed silent. A nervous laugh. Come on, stop playing games. Just talk to me. It was fascinating, really, the way she could act like she didn't know, like she hadn't spent months pushing me away, lying to my face, making me feel like a fool. Are you done? I finally asked, my voice calm, detached. She hesitated. What do you mean? I let out a slow breath, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Are you done pretending you don't know exactly why I left? Silence. For the first time, she had no quick comeback, no excuse ready to go. She faltered. Then she switched tactics. Look, if you were upset about something, we could have talked. You didn't have to. I laughed, a bitter sound. That's rich coming from you. I tried talking. I asked you what was wrong. I gave you every chance to be honest, and you chose to lie. Another silence. Longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. So what now? And there it was. The moment she finally realized she wasn't in control anymore. I glanced at the motel room around me, the unfamiliar walls, the suitcase in the corner. That's not up to you anymore, I said, then hung up. I knew her well enough to predict what would come next. She would tell herself this was temporary, that I was just being dramatic, that I'd come back when I calmed down. She had no idea just how wrong she was. This wasn't a break. This was the beginning of the end. There's something about silence that terrifies people. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, their own mistakes, without the comfort of distractions. For years, I had been the one to fill the silences in our marriage. I had been the one to smooth things over when she was distant, to pretend things were fine when they weren't, to make excuses for her when she withdrew. Now she was alone with the emptiness she had created, and she hated it. The day after I hung up on her, the messages started coming in waves. First, it was anger. "I can't believe you're acting like this. Be a man and talk to me." Then it shifted to guilt-tripping. "I know things haven't been perfect, but you just left without even trying to work things out." After that, she tried bargaining. "Let's just meet and talk. No pressure, just a conversation." I ignored every single one. I could picture her in our house, pacing the living room, phone in hand, frustrated that her usual tactics weren't working. She was used to being the one in control. She had spent months, maybe longer, testing my limits, seeing how far she could push before I broke. She had expected me to get angry. She had expected me to fight for her, to demand explanations, to plead, to beg. That was how these things were supposed to go, right? The betrayed husband was supposed to lose his mind, scream, cry, make a scene. And then maybe, just maybe, she would grant me the privilege of an explanation, of breadcrumbs of truth wrapped in more lies. Instead, I had given her something far worse. I had taken myself out of the equation entirely. By the end of the week, the messages slowed, and that's when I knew reality was sinking in for her. I had become a ghost in her life, but I wasn't done yet. Rewriting my story. It's a strange thing, rebuilding yourself after betrayal. You think it's going to be about revenge, about proving a point, but in reality, it's about something far more important. It's about reclaiming yourself. For so long, I had let my happiness be tied to her. I had convinced myself that love meant sacrifice, that if I just held on a little longer, things would get better. But they never had, and now I saw the truth. So I started focusing on something I hadn't in years. Myself. I found a short-term rental in a city an hour away. It wasn't much, just a furnished apartment that didn't feel like home, but that was the point. I didn't need a home right now. I needed a new start. I hit the gym, not out of some desperate attempt to glow up and make her regret losing me, but because I needed to feel strong again, both physically and mentally. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had drifted away from because I had been too busy being a husband to a woman who barely acknowledged me. And slowly, I started remembering who I was before her. But even as I rebuilt, I knew it wasn't over yet. Because while I was moving on, she was spiraling. When regret comes too late, 2 weeks after I left, she finally broke. It was late, past midnight, when my phone buzzed. I was tempted to ignore it, but something told me this one would be different. I picked it up, a voicemail. I pressed play, and for the first time in weeks I heard her voice. She sounded lost, defeated. "Hey, I don't even know if you'll listen to this. I don't know what to say. I keep thinking about the way you left, how you didn't even give me a chance to explain. I know I screwed up. I know I pushed you away, and I hate myself for it." There was a shaky breath, a pause, then quieter. "I miss you." I exhaled slowly, staring at the ceiling. There it was, the regret, the realization, the understanding that she had taken me for granted and assumed I'd always be there. But now she was finally seeing what life was like without me. And she hated it. I deleted the voicemail without responding. Let her sit with that. There's something satisfying about watching a liar crumble under the weight of their own deception. Not in a vindictive way. This wasn't about revenge. No, this was different. This was watching cause and effect play out in real time, seeing the consequences of her actions catch up with her in ways she never expected. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. Control. I had spent years letting her dictate the rhythm of our marriage, bending to her moods, making excuses for her behavior. But now she had no idea what to do. I wasn't screaming at her. I wasn't demanding answers. I wasn't standing in front of her, heart in my hands, begging for an explanation. I was gone. And that, more than anything, terrified her. I saw it firsthand when she finally found me. It had been almost a month since I walked away. I had cut off contact, changed my routine, started rebuilding. My days were mine now. Mornings at the gym, afternoons working remotely, evenings spent in the company of people who actually valued me. I had settled into a quiet routine, one that didn't revolve around the emotional minefield of my marriage. But she wasn't ready to let me go. It happened on a Saturday. I was coming back from a run, sweat still clinging to my skin when I saw her. She was parked in front of my apartment building, sitting in her car like she had been there for a while. I stopped mid-step, heart hammering against my ribs, not because I was nervous or scared, no, those feelings had burned out weeks ago, but because this was it, the moment I had been expecting. She saw me and scrambled out of the car, her movements frantic, desperate. "Wait, please!" Her voice was different. It wasn't the cold, detached tone she had perfected over the years. It wasn't the dismissive, condescending way she had spoken to me when she thought she held all the power. No, this was something else. This was fear. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. "What are you doing here?" She hesitated, her eyes searching mine like she was looking for some trace of the man who used to hang on to her every word. I needed to see you. You won't answer my calls. You won't even acknowledge me." I didn't say anything, just watched. She shifted on her feet, like the silence was suffocating. "Can we talk, please?" I could have laughed. After all the nights I'd spent lying awake hoping she would talk to me, trying to get her to let me in. And now she wanted to talk. Talk about what? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She swallowed hard, looking down for a moment before forcing herself to meet my gaze. "I made a mistake." There it was. The confession, the beginning of regret. But it was too little, too late. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. "Which mistake are we talking about?" Her face crumbled, just a little. She wasn't expecting this version of me, the one who wasn't playing her game anymore, the one who wasn't desperate for answers. "I should have been honest with you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have." I held up a hand. "Stop," she blinked. "What?" I stepped closer, just enough so she could see the certainty in my face. "You're not here because you regret what you did. You're here because you regret losing me." She opened her mouth, but no words came out because we both knew I was right. I let out a slow breath and shook my head. "You made your choices. You don't get to undo them just because you don't like the consequences." For the first time, I saw real panic in her eyes. She had assumed I was just mad, that I would come around, that I would fight for her like I always had. But now she was realizing the truth. I wasn't coming back. And that scared her more than anything. She reached out like she wanted to touch me, but I stepped back. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to do that." Tears welled in her eyes. "I miss you." I didn't. And that was the difference. I turned and walked past her, leaving her standing there, alone, in the reality she had created. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one left behind. She was. It's funny how people only appreciate something once it's gone. How they assume that just because something has always been there, it always will be. That's what she thought about me. She believed that no matter how distant she became, no matter how many times she ignored me, shut me out, and played her little games, I would still be there. She thought she had me figured out. She was wrong. I spent years playing the role of the devoted husband, the man who would push aside his own pain just to make her happy. I told myself that love meant patience, that marriage meant sacrifice, and in doing so, I let her take me for granted. But that version of me, he was gone. After I walked away from her that day in front of my apartment, I expected her to disappear from my life completely. She had too much pride to beg, too much arrogance to admit she had lost control. I thought she would slink back into her carefully curated world, the one where she was always in charge, and convince herself that she didn't care. I underestimated her desperation. It started small, a few more messages, carefully worded to sound casual, like she wasn't drowning in regret. I ignored them. Then she started showing up at my gym, at the coffee shop I went to in the mornings, always acting surprised as if it was some wild coincidence. I wasn't an idiot. She wasn't there because she missed the coffee. She was there because, for the first time, I had become something she couldn't have, and it was driving her insane. One morning I stepped out of the gym, wiping sweat from my face, and there she was, standing by her car, arms crossed, waiting. I almost laughed. "Are you seriously stalking me now?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She bristled, clearly offended. "I'm not stalking you. I need to talk." I sighed, shaking my head. "We already talked." "No, you talked. I listened, and then you just walked away." She hesitated, biting her lip. "That's not fair." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Not fair," I repeated. "You want to talk about fair?" She flinched. I saw the flash of guilt in her eyes, but I didn't care. "You don't get to play the victim here," I continued, my voice steady. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." She took a shaky breath, like she was struggling to keep it together. "I know I messed up. I know I took you for granted. But walking away like this, pretending like we meant nothing—" "That's where you're wrong," I met her gaze, unflinching. "We did mean something. You just didn't appreciate it until it was too late." Her eyes filled with something that almost looked like genuine regret. Maybe it was real. Maybe for the first time she actually saw the damage she had done. But it didn't change anything. She reached for my arm, a desperate attempt to recreate a connection that no longer existed. I stepped back before she could touch me. Her face crumbled. For years I had been the one chasing her, the one trying to bridge the growing distance between us. But now, for the first time, she was the one reaching for me, and I wasn't there anymore. I saw the moment she realized it, the way her shoulders slumped, the way she swallowed hard, like she was fighting back something she wasn't used to feeling. Loss. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I nodded once, acknowledging the words but not accepting them. And then I walked away, because some things once broken can never be fixed. Regret is a slow poison. It doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in, creeping through the cracks, sinking into the spaces between your thoughts. It starts as an irritation, an itch you can't quite scratch. But over time it grows. It festers. It becomes unbearable. I know because I had felt it once, long before I walked away. Long before I realized the woman I had given my life to had already chosen someone else. I had felt regret. I regretted the time I had wasted, the nights I had spent lying awake wondering what I had done wrong. I regretted every excuse I made for her. Every moment I convinced myself that if I just tried a little harder, she would love me the way I had loved her. But my regret had come with a lesson. Hers was just beginning. I didn't need to see her to know it was eating her alive. I could hear it in the way her messages changed. The confident, irritated texts from before, "You're being immature," and "We need to talk," had turned into something else entirely. Now she was reaching for anything that would get a response. "I don't know how to do this without you. Please just tell me if you're okay. I miss you." At first, I ignored them. Letting her sit in the silence was the only way she would ever understand what she had done. But then, one night, a message came that was different. "I don't think I can take this anymore." I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't cruel. I had loved her once, and even now, after everything, I didn't want to see her spiral into something dark. But I also knew better than to fall into the trap of her emotions. So I responded, one word. Then don't. No reassurance, no comfort. Just a reminder that she was the one who had done this to herself. The messages stopped after that. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had finally accepted it. That she would go on with her life the way she had planned, the way she had wanted to when she thought I was disposable. But I underestimated just how much she had convinced herself that I would always be there. I should have known it wasn't over, when a ghost refuses to stay gone. A week later, I was at a bar with some friends. It wasn't something I had done much in the past, not because she had ever told me not to, but because I had spent so much time trying to be the kind of man she wanted that I had stopped being the kind of man I actually was. The place was dimly lit, crowded just enough that conversations blended into a low hum. I was mid-laugh, my first genuine one in what felt like years, when the air shifted. I didn't have to turn around to know she was there. It was a feeling, like the weight of someone staring, like a presence you can't ignore no matter how much you want to. And sure enough, when I finally looked up, there she was, standing near the entrance, arms wrapped around herself, scanning the room like she was searching for something. For me. Our eyes met, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she made a beeline toward me. The people at my table noticed, their conversations pausing as they followed my gaze. One of my friends, Matt, leaned in slightly. "You good?" I nodded, exhaling slowly. "Yeah, just didn't expect this." She stopped in front of me, her eyes wide, searching. "You're here?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I am." She swallowed, glancing at the people around me, then back at me. "Can we talk?" I tilted my head, considering. "About what?" She hesitated, her fingers twitching like she wanted to reach for me but knew she couldn't. "About us." A bitter smile tugged at my lips. "There is no us." The words hit her like a slap. She flinched, just barely, but I saw it. Still, she didn't back down. "Just 5 minutes, please." The old me would have caved. The old me would have let her pull me back in, let her use whatever words she had prepared to twist the situation into something she could control again. But the old me was gone. So I stood up, not because I was giving in, but because I wanted to make one thing very, very clear. I leaned in, just slightly, my voice slow enough that only she could hear. "You had all the time in the world to talk when I asked you if something was wrong, when I begged you to let me in, when I was right there, willing to fight for you." Her breath hitched. I straightened, stepping back. "That time is gone. You lost it." She reached for my arm, desperate. "Please." I shook my head. Go home, Emily. Her face crumbled. She hadn't expected that. She had come here thinking that if she just saw me, if she just got me alone, she could fix it. But she couldn't. She had already broken it beyond repair. I turned and walked back to my table, back to my life. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. They say that some people don't realize the value of what they have until it's gone, but that's not exactly true, is it? I think most people know when they have something good. They just believe they'll never lose it. That's what she thought about me. That no matter how far she pushed, no matter how many times she dismissed me, ignored me, took me for granted, I would always be there. That even if she betrayed me, even if she chose someone else behind my back, I'd still be waiting in the wings, too loyal, too devoted to ever truly walk away. But she miscalculated, and now she was living in a world where I no longer existed for her. In the weeks after she showed up at the bar, the messages started again. This time they weren't angry or guilt-tripping or demanding. This time they were empty, as if she was grasping for anything that might make me acknowledge her. Do you remember that trip we took to the lake? I found some old pictures. I ran into your mom the other day. She asked about you. I still can't believe you're just gone. It doesn't feel real. I never answered. She didn't deserve my answers anymore. I had moved on, not just physically, but mentally. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged to myself again. My life wasn't revolving around her moods, her wants, her manipulation. I woke up each morning with a sense of peace I had forgotten was possible. I was laughing more, making plans, actually looking forward to things again. Meanwhile, she was unraveling. I heard it from mutual friends, the way she seemed distracted, lost in thought at work, how she had stopped posting on social media, no longer eager to display her carefully curated life for the world to see. One friend even mentioned that she had been spotted at a bar, sitting alone, staring at her phone for nearly an hour before leaving without talking to anyone. She had built her world on the assumption that I would always be in it. Now that I wasn't, she didn't know how to function, but I had no sympathy left to give. The final goodbye. It was a Friday evening when she showed up at my door. I had just gotten home from work, setting down my keys, when there was a knock. I knew it was her before I even opened it. I could feel it. When I pulled the door open, she was standing there, looking smaller than I remembered. She wasn't dressed up, wasn't wearing any of the smug, self-assured expressions she used to. Instead, she looked exhausted, hollow. I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "What do you want, Emily?" She swallowed hard, glancing at the ground before forcing herself to meet my eyes. I needed to see you." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" A humorless laugh escaped her lips. "Do you really not know?" I shrugged. "I have a guess, but I don't see how it matters." She took a step closer, and I could see the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "I know I don't deserve another chance," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I ruined everything, but I don't know how to move on without you." I stared at her for a long moment, letting her words settle. Then I exhaled, shaking my head. "You don't have to." Hope flickered in her eyes for a brief second. "I don't?" I nodded. "No, you don't have to move on without me." I paused, watching as relief washed over her face. Then I delivered the truth. "Because you already did." Confusion, then realization, then devastation. She took a shaky breath. "That's not fair." "No," I said calmly. "What's not fair is that I spent years loving someone who only realized what she had when it was too late. What's not fair is that I gave you chance after chance and you threw them away. What's not fair is that you thought you could cheat, lie, and take me for granted, and that I would still be waiting for you when you decided you were ready. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. She had already cried too late. I took one last look at the woman I once thought I would spend my life with, and then, with the same finality with which she had destroyed our marriage, I closed the door. And this time, I never looked back. The sound of the door clicking shut behind her was more than just the end of a conversation. It was the end of a chapter, a long, painful, exhausting chapter of my life that should have ended long ago. And as I stood there, taking in the silence that followed, I realized something. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel anything for her at all. For so long I had been drowning in emotions, confusion, heartbreak, betrayal. But now I was free. Not just from her, but from the version of myself who had spent years believing that love meant sacrificing my own happiness. That night I slept deeply. No tossing and turning. No weight on my chest. Just peace. A new beginning. In the weeks that followed, my life took on a new rhythm, and for the first time, it was a rhythm I chose. I traveled, not to escape, but because I wanted to. I went to places I had always put off, did things I had always told myself I'd do one day, hiking in the mountains, eating at that tiny cafe I had passed 100 times but never walked into, reconnecting with old friends who had been pushed aside because I had been too busy trying to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. And somewhere along the way, I found myself again. I wasn't the same man who had stood in that house watching his wife pull away while pretending everything was fine. I wasn't the man who had spent sleepless nights wondering where he had gone wrong. I was someone new, stronger, wiser, happier, closure without bitterness. One day, months later, I got a message from Emily. Not a desperate plea, not an attempt to reel me back in. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. And for the first time, I believed her. But it didn't change anything. I didn't answer, not out of anger or resentment, but because I had nothing left to say. I had already moved on. The life I was always meant to have. A year after I walked away from Emily, I met someone new. Not in some dramatic love-at-first-sight way. There were no grand gestures, no whirlwind romance. Just a simple conversation with a woman who made me laugh, who looked at me like I was worth something, who didn't treat me like an option. And this time, I didn't have to fight for her attention. I didn't have to prove my worth. She saw me, really saw me, and I realized in that moment that everything I had gone through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the painful journey of rebuilding, had led me to this, to her, to a love that didn't demand sacrifice but offered partnership. Looking back, I don't regret what happened, because sometimes losing something you thought you needed is the only way to make room for what you truly deserve. And I finally had what I deserved. A life that was mine, a love that was real, and the peace that came with knowing I had never really lost anything at all. I had only just begun.